What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I haven't done a video on this channel in, a year, 2 years, maybe even 3, but I thought we'd sit down today and have a little bit of a chat. A little bit of a chat about Manchester City's Champions League win on Saturday night, becoming only the second team ever in English football to have won a treble of the Premier League, Champions League and the FA Cup. And I want to talk about why I think it's actually good for football, as opposed to the many opinions that state that this is the worst thing to have ever happened to football and it is a complete and utter disaster. Now, I, for one, am only seeing these type of opinions from supporters of Manchester United, Liverpool, maybe Chelsea, maybe Arsenal, the teams that, let's be perfectly honest, are jealous of Manchester City. That is all it boils down to at the end of the day, is complete and utter jealousy. And I'm no Manchester City fan, in case you've never seen any of my content or you're not familiar with our other channel. I'm an Evertonian, so I have no real care in the world about who wins the Champions League or who wins the Premier League or, who wins a treble and who doesn't. I don't really care. As long as it's not Liverpool, I don't really care who wins it and who doesn't win it. I've got no interest in Manchester United. If Manchester United did it next season, then I'd sit here and I'd congratulate them as much as Manchester City. But what I am sick of seeing is the notion that Manchester City have completely bought the treble and Manchester City don't deserve the credit because, they've spent this amount of money and that amount of money, and Pep Guardiola's only a good manager because of the funds that he's got. It's absolutely complete and utter nonsense. Now, have Manchester City spent grotesque amounts of money over the last 10, 15 years to achieve what they achieved on Saturday night? Yes, they have. They've spent upwards of £1 billion. They've had the best manager in the world for the last 5-6 years. They're able to bring any player in world football into that football club, and they're able to spend more money than most of us could ever imagine even being able to count up to. However, the same can be said about Manchester United, and very similar can be said about Liverpool. Now, have Liverpool spent as much money as Manchester City over the years? No. And have Liverpool, been able to achieve a treble? No. But Liverpool have still spent a fair amount of money. I think this absolute notion that when Liverpool won the Champions League in 2019 and won the Premier League the season after, that it was a complete and utter absolute miracle that it managed to happen, and that they didn't spend a single penny to get there, and they did it with 11 academy players on the pitch, and it was the best thing ever because, oh my God, they've overcome all odds, is complete and utter nonsense. They've got a goalkeeper that cost them £75 million upwards. They've got a centre-back that cost them £75 million upwards. They've got a winger on £300,000 a week, if not more. And they've got various other players within that squad that cost them £40-50 million. Naby Keita cost them £50-odd million. Oxlade-Chamberlain cost them a fair amount of money. Now, have Liverpool been very smart in their recruitment over the years? Of course they have. They always have been. They've managed to move on some of the young players that haven't got a future and got big fees for them. The likes of Solanke, the likes of Jordan, Ryan Brewster, etc. But they've also spent big money. Yes, they've brought in money for the likes of Coutinho and a couple of other players that they've sold, but they have also spent a ridiculous amount of money on players. Not as much as Manchester City, no, but they've still spent a ridiculous amount of money on players. And the idea that Manchester City are the only team in this country that spend, silly amounts of money and football is dead because they've only done this because of their finances is nonsense. Now, obviously, the Manchester City situation has got a bit of a cloud hanging over it with their financial, situation, and the fact that they're under investigation. And if it comes out that they're found guilty of the 115 charges or whatever it is for breaching financial fair play, then I'm sure I'll sit here and say, do you know what, maybe it wasn't as deserved as what I originally think it is, because they've obviously broken the rules to get to where they are, and that isn't acceptable. However, let's not act like Manchester United and Liverpool have been, completely innocent over the last 15 years of their successes. Certainly, Manchester United. I can remember Manchester United winning Premier League titles based on refereeing decisions that were borderline absolutely criminal at the time. I remember Liverpool winning a Champions League final on the basis of, decisions that, again, you would look at and go, hang on, That doesn't seem right. So let's not act like there's a whole load of innocence in everybody else's success, but not Manchester City's. The fact of the matter is, Manchester City did what only one other team has done in the past. And Manchester United fans that are sitting here now bitter and sour and jealous, saying it's not as good as it was in 99, this, that and the other. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? It's exactly the same as what it was in 99, because Manchester City have just achieved exactly the same as what Manchester United have. And okay, that Manchester United team might have had more academy graduates than what this Manchester City side has, but that's football now. In the 90s, there was a lot of academy graduates that were given opportunities, that were able to rise to the very top because of the way in which football was played. Football has changed dramatically over the last 23 years. And the fact of the matter is that name me a massively successful team, certainly coming from England in the last 5 or 10 years, that has had 6, 7 academy graduates in its starting 11. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And whilst, as I've mentioned, I'm not a Manchester City fan, and whether or not Manchester City won or lost on Saturday, it wouldn't have made any difference to me. What I do think needs to be noticed is the appreciation for what we've just witnessed. And what we've just witnessed is footballing history. A manager who has just managed to win his second treble of his career with his second different club. And a set of players that have just managed to win a treble. Again, as I said, something that hasn't been done in over 23 years. So this notion that, oh, they bought it, and oh, they this, and oh, they that, and oh, they've cheated, and this, that, and the other. Yes, as I said, if they're found guilty, then, of course, that's absolutely right, and those criticisms are fair. But as of this moment now, it's just pure jealousy and pure sourness and pure hatred, because it's not their football club. And this is what frustrates me in this country. I don't particularly care about who wins the Champions League, as I've mentioned, because I'm an Evertonian and I've got bigger issues to think about with Everton Football Club. But there is definitely a notion in this country that if it isn't Manchester United or Liverpool winning the big trophies, then it's not enough. Or, will Manchester City have bought the league? Or will Chelsea, have did this? They've spent this much money. They've spent that much money. Let me just remind you all that Manchester United in the last 6 years have spent more than Manchester City. And that's on net spend. So I know there'll be a lot of Liverpool fans in the comments saying, well, what about net spend? What about net spend? It's funny when net spend gets brought up, because when you talk about net spend, Liverpool fans will say, well, we sold Coutinho for 155 billion quid. You didn't get anywhere near as much as you think you got. But firstly, net spend works for everybody then, doesn't it? So when the people say, wow, well, you can't say Haaland only cost 50 million because of his wages and his signing on fee and his bonuses. Okay. Well, Salah hasn't cost 30 million then, has he? Because he's on 300 grand a week, and I'm sure he's got ridiculous bonuses. And Van Dijk and Alisson, etc., etc. And I'm not trying to discredit though that that Liverpool team that won the Champions League and the Premier League. Again, they were 2 games away from winning a quadruple the season before last, which would have been unheard of. But you don't have to discredit this Manchester City team for spending money when everybody else has spent money. Have they spent a little bit more? Yes, in some cases. No, in other cases. Manchester United have won no Premier League titles in the last decade and no Champions Leagues in over a decade, and they've spent more than Manchester City. So why am I seeing big Manchester United content creators coming out and acting like, oh my God, they've bought it and it's this and it's that and it's the other, when if it was Manchester United, they wouldn't be sitting there saying, well, we've bought it, so we can't really celebrate. They'd be sitting there talking about history and legacy and this, that and the other. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And there is a notion in this country that only certain teams can achieve massive amounts of success, and if other teams achieve massive amounts of success, then it's not, it's not good enough, and it shouldn't be accepted. And there's obviously a clear reason as to why this has happened: cheating or spending too much money or whatever. No, it's just that Manchester City are the best team in the world. And let's be honest, they've been the best team in the world for some years. They've just never been able to get over that final hurdle. Well, they have now. They've won a Champions League. They've won 5 Premier Leagues in the last 6 years. They've won countless FA Cups. They've won countless Carabao Cups. So, okay, they've spent a ridiculous amount of money. And as I said, if they're found guilty of those charges, then it all comes into, it all starts to be questioned. And then you can have those conversations of whether or not they deserve it. But as of now, they are innocent. because they're innocent until being proven guilty. And they may well be innocent, and they may come out of this innocent, and then what? Bob will have spent loads of money. Manchester United have spent more, and they've won nothing in that period of time. That, over the last 6 years. One Carabao Cup. But because Manchester United historically are a big club who win European trophies and Premier Leagues, that doesn't get brought up. It's because Manchester City haven't got that history in winning in Europe or winning mass amounts of league titles that now that is getting focused on. The notion that only certain teams can be successful in Europe, and if other teams aren't as successful, then there must be a reason as to why they've cheated, is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And as I said, I'm not a massive Premier League fan. I'm an Evertonian. And that's all that matters to me is Everton. But for all of these people and content creators that claim to be Premier League fans and it's good for the league and this, that and the other, there is no reason on this planet that you can give me as to why Manchester City winning a treble isn't good for the Premier League. No reason. No reason. Because if it was Liverpool, Manchester United, or Arsenal, or, I don't know, maybe even Chelsea, nobody would have an issue with it, and it'd be great for the league, and it'd be great for football. So it's the same for Manchester City. Yes, they've spent money. Yes, they've spent, uncontrollable amounts of money that most of us, as I said, could never dream of spending. But are you Man United fans seriously telling me that if you're taking over now by somebody with billions of pounds and he pumps in this, and he manages the football club like Manchester City have been managed, and Man United go on and win a treble in the next 5 years, that you'll all be sitting there going, oh yeah, but we bought this, oh, but we spent loads of money to get to here. No, you won't. You'll be absolutely buzzing. Stop embarrassing yourselves. I get that you mightn't be happy because your rivals have won a league title. I get that you mightn't be happy because your rivals have just done a treble, which is something that, as I said, hasn't been managed for 23 years. Be fuming, be bitter, have your little rant and rave and this and that and the other. But to sit there and talk about, oh, it ruined football, football is dead, this, that and the other. Football is dead, but it ain't dead because Manchester City have just won a treble. It's been dead for years. It's been dead because of the amount of money in it. And it ain't just Manchester City spending hundreds of millions a year, by the way. Manchester United, Liverpool invest. Okay, maybe not as much. Manchester United certainly as much. Newcastle will do the same. Chelsea have spent hundreds of millions in the last 6 months. That is just football. So yeah, you're right, football is dead. But football would have been dead whether or not Manchester City won on Saturday night or Inter Milan won on Saturday night. Stop the jealousy. It's embarrassing. You're embarrassing yourselves. Don't like it? Sound. Your rivals, you're not happy? Sound. But let's have a bit of perspective here. For these people that are claiming to be Premier League fans and want what's best for the Premier League, that on Saturday night is what's best for the Premier League. It's as simple as that. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like. We'll be back on the next one. Cheers for watching. See you later.